Okay, let me introduce them all three resource speakers. First is the Chief Advisor on Local Governance, Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit. He graduated from the University of Leipzig in Germany with a Master's in Political Science and has a PhD from Humboldt University, Berlin, Germany. He was a visiting research fellow to UP NCPAC in 2005, but that's not the reason why he is here. Because he has written a paper on innovative approaches of communal land use planning to foster local land governance and strengthen the capacity of adaptation to climate change in Madagascar and the Philippines. We have here with us Dr. Andres Lange, who will speak on land use planning for climate change adaptation in the Philippines, what can be done. Our second speaker is the project coordinator, Sorsogon City Climate Change Project Office, Sorsogon City. He has many degrees: diploma in environmental management, diploma in development economics, political science, and bachelor's degree in public administration. He has he has been consultant of several government offices like Sorsogon City, Energy Development Corporation, Environmental Consultancy Services of Quezon City, CICIG Garrison Velayo, and the Presidential Council for Countryside Development, and has held executive positions in other various government agencies. He has also taught in several universities and colleges, for example, in Pampanga, TESDA, Ateneo de Manila University, and Sorsogon State College. He will be talking about climate change and local governance in Sorsogon City. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tito Fortes. Okay, last but not certainly the least is our third speaker is a PhD candidate, China Studies at the Institute of China and Asia Pacific Studies of the National Sun Yat-sen University in the Republic of China. This is Taiwan. Okay. Lieutenant Colonel, our speaker obtained his master's degree in National Security Administration from the National Defense College of the Philippines. He received his bachelor's degree in, what do you know, NCPAG, in several decades ago, because he was my classmate. But that's not the reason he is here, because he has very good projects on disaster risk reduction in the Dagupan City. Prior to pursuing his PhD, Lieutenant Colonel, our speaker served in the Philippine government both at the national and local levels. He was a former member of the Dagupan City Council, City Parliament. At present, he is City Administrator of the Dagupan City and Executive Director of the City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. His research interests include state-society relations, social and civil society movement, third sector management, etc., etc. He will be talking about coastal climate change adaptation, the case of the Dagupan City. Okay, so we are going to start with a paper of Dr. Andres Lange talking about participatory land use planning.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers first for inviting me. I was assured that the invitation is based on peer review and not on former attendance to UP NCPAC. No, just joking. Yeah, indeed, it's nice that you remembered me. I had a very good time back in 2005 at UP NCPAC, and it was also very crucial actually for my research at that time. I'm still benefiting from it. I'm going to talk about land use planning for climate change adaptation in the Philippines, what can be done. This paper is actually based, as was already mentioned, on a paper that GIZ has presented at the World Bank Conference on Poverty and Land this year in April in Washington. And we have just edited a little bit and provided a little bit more of information. It's going to be a little bit more technical, I think, than in the other panel, and I'm trying to shed some light on the question, what exactly are the adaptation options for local government units in the Philippines based on the framework we heard earlier, that framework that has some limitations. terms of institutional shape, but also in terms of resources. Next slide, please. Yes, this has already been mentioned. Cagayan de Oro. I think this is an example of this disaster last year. We can see well that not only the striking amount of rain is causing issues, but there also has been a very big illegal settlement issue along the Cagayan River in Sidio City, which has actually worsened the impact of this kind of disaster. So I think this is a very good example of non-existing or not, let's say, almost non-existing proper land use planning can actually worsen effects of climate change. And going to try to address it from that perspective in the presentation. Next slide, please. It was already mentioned. The Philippines are a very vulnerable country, and just to give maybe a few additional facts in terms of forest cover reduction. Over the past 100 years, forest cover was reduced by 70%. The remaining forest is also quite under stress because lots of the remaining forest areas are actually not natural forest anymore, but secondary forest, or even less than that. There are a couple of regulatory problems. There is a lack of spatial planning or land use planning, and there's also a problem with the land management system at all levels. There is, in addition, there's a compliance problems in terms of following policies and laws prescribed. It was mentioned earlier that the policy framework of the Philippines actually is quite good. I'm going to show this later on, also for the climate change sector, but compliance at the local level is very often very low. This is recent data from the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board. Only 484 out of 1,635 municipalities and cities have updated land use plans. Of course, there is illegal settlements and demographic growth that's putting land under stress. The DNR is estimating that 25 million people live in upland areas or in forest lands. And we see a lot of overlapping land uses and resulting land conflicts that you all are well aware of. Just on the next slide, which I borrow from Dave Tavera from the Philippine Association for Intercultural Development. It's probably a little bit tricky to see, but basically the red areas, the red dots are ancestral domain areas, while it's not good, you cannot really see it, while the white areas are protected areas, and then the black dots are application for mining. And there's a lot of overlap. Sometimes two of these or three of these domains are actually overlapping, so it's creating quite a lot of issues in terms of dealing with these conflicts and managing actually land at the local level. The next slide, I think I would just maybe like to continue because I think it has some animations there. Yeah, just quickly, I mean, you all are aware of the situation of the three types of land we have: the private domain, ancestral domain, and the public domain. And of course, there are different oversight agencies, and there are conflicts among the domains, between the domains or within. And maybe next, one more click. Yeah. What we observe is that if you look at the municipal territory, it was mentioned earlier by the lady from DAR, I think. What you see is that in terms of ecosystem, various domains do not really, the way they're planned for does not really provide for an integrated ecosystems approach. That's why I think there is a very good now a move to look at land, local territory at an ecosystem perspective. But right now, in terms of regulatory framework, this is not really in place yet, and I'm going to show later on what kind of problems this is creating and what can be actually done about it in terms of also adaptation, even now with the current framework in place. Next. just to give some credit to the, also in terms of policy, we have heard about the Climate Change Act, very crucial instrument, but I'm just going to skip that. Next. Yes, this one, the Philippine Strategy on Climate Change Adaptation was mentioned earlier, very crucial document, and the adaptation of rich to reef approach in resource management planning and implementation is on its way. Also the Climate Change Commission, GIZ is also working with the Climate Change Commission, by the way, is recognizing of the fact that this is a very important approach. Also DNR and DA, however, in terms of operationalizing it at the local level, I think still some work needs to be done. Next slide, please. Yeah, just quickly to, as a reminder, land use planning has a lot of important functions. And climate change adaptation / mitigation is one of them. We see a lot of issues: sea level rise, high rainfall variability, it was mentioned earlier, frequency of droughts, also in the Philippines. I'll show you some data later on. Yeah, and then the other issues, melting glaciers and desertification, is not relevant for the Philippines, but of course we have floods and storms. So land use or land as a factor in land use planning, planning for land and management of land can address many of these issues and has to address many of these issues. Next. So the objective of a good land use planning, it creates preconditions required to achieve the type of land use that is environmentally sustainable, socially just, and desirable and economically sound. And you will find many of these formulations in the proposed National Land Use Act. Maybe some of the key elements: transparency, analysis of potential and constraints, options for optimal land use. It's very important. We heard earlier discussions about valuation of land, so there are compromises to be made. That's clear. Zoning is very important, given the way land use is prescribed in the Philippine context, and adopting an ecosystem perspective is also quite an important issue. Just to give a short background, the experience I'm going to present that GIZ has basically come up with, and that I'm going to present in collaboration with DNR, DA, DAR, and local government units, is collected in about 25, 28 local government units in Leyte Southern, Leyte, Negros Occidental, and Antique. Those are partner LGUs of the ENRD and Environment and Natural Resources Development Program and Decentralization Program. Next. We can skip that. This is just basically a flavor of the amount of prescribed plans by the national agencies that are all dealing with climate change adaptation. Each of them is very important. Provincial framework plan, comprehensive land use plan, barangay development plans are prescribed, comprehensive development plan, forest land use plan, ancestral domain development protection plan, and we could actually further that list. There is certainly quite an amount of plans prescribed, and the consistency certainly is also not given at any point in time. Anyway, we're trying to support these plans and bring them together in one perspective. And the example where we have tried it, next slide please, is a small rural LGU, local government unit, municipality in southern Leyte. That's called Silago, and we have conducted a study together with Manila Observatory and the World Agroforestry Center that looked at patterns of vulnerability in forestry, agriculture, water, and coastal sectors. And I'm just not going to give you all the data. It's just it's a rather small area, but very typical for the rural context.